On this edition of the program, an interview about the world of foreign influence. Brand new book is coming out. Ken Vogel is going to join the show. I got some thoughts on the Gaza peace deal credit grabbing, specifically from the Biden administration. A look at the New York City mayoral race. A look at the Texas Republican Senate primary, which just got very, very interesting. All that coming up.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics program for October 10th, 2025. Your old pal Justin Robert Young joining you here back in Austin, Texas. Gosh, dang it, does it feel good to be back home. I am having a great time. Slept in my own bed. But while I was on the West Coast getting bipped, news, boy, did it ever flow. We put out our PX3 Extra out for the entire feed because the news was just too big. We had the Gaza news breaking. I got some more thoughts on that. We're going to get to Ken Vogel. His new book, Devil's Advocates, is out next week, and you got to pre-buy it now. If you like well-reported stuff, you got to go and read it. This is good stuff. Vogel put out an excerpt from his brand new book in the New York Times, which is his day job. And I retweeted it and said that Ken was going to be on the show today. And I had somebody on Twitter say, what are we doing? Because the article was about Hunter Biden. Ken Vogel's book is all about foreign influence. Not only Hunter Biden and Rudy Giuliani, but also a lot of very colorful characters that work for a lot of people that are, dubious. Let's say charitably. And someone was like, oh, why are we still talking about Hunter Biden? There's so much to talk about now. It's like, well, because the dude wrote a book about it. He put a lot of time and effort into it. And I want to recognize that that's a valuable part of how we understand the world around us. Not everything is rip the news right off the vine and yam it in your gob, okay? We don't only eat green bananas in this world. Sometimes these things need to ripen. And we want to recognize when that happens. So, great interview with Ken Vogel. That's coming up here in a second. But we got a lot of stories that we want to get to. And I just have this thought that I didn't have a chance to talk about as far as the Gaza peace deal goes. Talking with a friend of the program, Will Harris, out there in the United Kingdom. And he goes, man, it's crazy that Trump's getting credit for Biden's peace deal. And then I looked online, and this was something that I was out of the loop on. You know, we used to say that there were two Americas, but we're not even talking about America here. That's the foreign influence of how the UK press is covering this deal. But it also exists here in America. And certainly there were frameworks that were similar to this deal that were floated by the Biden administration before, they lost. And now Donald Trump is in here. And he seems to have landed a deal. And I found that a little rich for two reasons. One is that to say that you have a Middle East peace plan and to get all of the people that need to sign on to a Middle East peace plan to sign on to a Middle East peace plan is like saying, I have a diet that I have written down and actually losing 30 pounds and gaining 20 pounds of muscle and hitting all of your fitness goals. What is on paper is not always what happens. and especially in a region like the Middle East that is particularly capricious and sectarian. You got a lot of people that straight up don't like and don't trust each other. So it doesn't matter how eloquently your plan is written, there's a lot that it takes to go from here to there. The Biden administration could not do that. And I got my thoughts as to why. Specifically, that they ultimately thought that this was going to have to end by the United States restricting things to Israel, but they didn't want to be looked at as ending Israel's plan to exact whatever revenge they were going, justice, maybe not revenge, whatever. Everybody's going to look at it their own way. The Biden administration ultimately wanted to pressure Israel to do it, but didn't want to be seen as pressuring Israel to end the war. That's how they thought it was going to end. Now, they also were very mad because they thought they had a deal with Saudi Arabia, and then that fell apart largely because of October 7th. But still, to quote The Social Network, fake Mark Zuckerberg, if the Biden administration were the inventors of the Gaza peace plan, then Joe Biden's name would have been on the Gaza peace plan. But that's not what I find funny. What I find funny is that of all people, the Biden administration wants credit for a framework and work that they did that the Trump administration completed. Very interesting, because I am old enough to remember 2020. In 2020, and a lot of people want to remember this different ways now for political reasons, including the Trump administration, what I thought one of the most Trumpian benefits to American, if not international society, was Operation Warp Speed for the vaccines. Now, I know the vaccines are controversial, and I don't want to swim in a sea of emails talking about vaccine injuries and whether or not this stuff was rushed. Obviously, that's a conversation that can be had. But the way that the American mind works is, if we have a sickness that is bad enough to shut down the economy, then that means we need to solve it one way or another. The vaccine was the most understandable way in which we could bring a public consensus to the idea of reopening our society. And instead of a vaccine lasting years, Donald Trump cut red tape through Operation Warp Speed to get the vaccine to market as fast as possible. I thought that was a good thing. And also, there were apparently plans to distribute it. Then Donald Trump lost. And the Biden administration told every reporter that would listen that everything that was done on the Trump administration side when it came to vaccinations was a total mess or non-existent. And that the Biden administration heroically had to build from absolute square one to get these vaccines out to everybody that needed to get one. Now, the Biden administration does deserve credit for distribution. They were the ones that did it. But I always found it odd that a notable way to share credit and to give some kind of bipartisan sheen to what is a public health emergency, and certainly was at the time, was always passed by the Biden administration. They never wanted to give the Trump team credit, even for Operation Warp Speed. And even when it was a politically viable thing for them to do, as the anti-vaccine bloc grew and grew and grew on the right, they could stab their political opponent, maybe even jab, when it came to that issue. Tie Trump to the vaccine by giving him credit. But they never did. And oh, how the turntables. Now, the Biden State Department worked tirelessly on a Middle East peace plan, and eventually the time was right for it to be struck. And now they want credit. Sometimes there is just poetic irony in this world of politics. Do I think that they deserve credit? I would give it to them on some level to say that, look, the United States of America has worked for years to try and find a solution to this especially bloody conflict that began on October 7th when Hamas crossed into Israel and seems to have ended just a hair over 2 years later. And that effort spanned the Biden administration and then the Trump administration. Now, if somebody gets the Nobel Peace Prize, it'll be Trump. But if I were in the Trump administration, I would tell reporters, I mean, maybe not at a press conference, but maybe on background, that it was helpful to have the framework that the Biden administration had. But, you know, again, a plan's a plan. A deal is another thing entirely. But if they got zero credit at all whatsoever, well, it wouldn't shock me. This is your update, brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. That's where you need to go if you want to get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. New Quinnipiac University poll shows former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo closing the gap with frontrunner Zohran Mamdani in the New York City mayoral race following Eric Adams' exit. Mamdani leads with 46% to Cuomo's 33%, while Republican Curtis Sliwa holds 15%. Cuomo gained 10 points since September, benefiting from Adams' departure and shared moderate voter base. Mamdani, though, remains favored 46% over the 43% that he was there. He has not consistently breached 50, but still close enough. And as long as Sliwa remains in the race, for my money, he is the unquestioned favorite. Cuomo's campaign says the race is now a 2-person contest. This poll was taken with 1,015 voters, is a 3.9% margin of error. Look, if you're the Cuomo campaign, obviously you'd like more. You'd like to see movement that isn't just tied to Adams being out of the race, and you'd love to see Curtis Sliwa find, some new job somewhere else. But I think this is over, guys. Mayor Mamdani, it's just on. It's on and popping. This is going to happen. I don't know how many other ways to say it. Unless there is some crazy turn in the next week, I don't see the Mamdani campaign making a mistake that would be of that level of magnitude. I think that the city has made its decision, and you don't mess with the Zohran. New York Attorney General Letitia James has been indicted on a fraud charge in the Eastern District of Virginia following a mortgage investigation, according to a person familiar with the case. The move marks another Justice Department prosecution targeting critics of President Donald Trump, coming 2 weeks after ex-FBI Director James Comey's indictment. The case was brought by Trump aide and former personal lawyer Lindsay Halligan, who replaced a veteran prosecutor reportedly resisting pressure to indict. James denies wrongdoing, calling it political retribution for her civil fraud victory against Trump. The sealed case's evidence remains unknown, but you can see what it probably is right now if you go to the website whitecollarfraud.com. That is the personal blog of Sam Antar. If you know that name, it is likely because you listen to World's Greatest Con, my podcast with Brian Brushwood, where we did a 2-part episode about Crazy Eddie. Crazy Eddie was a retail store in the tri-state area through the 80s, which any kid who grew up in that era knows, anybody who was alive in that era knows, because the commercials for Crazy Eddie was omnipresent. They were famous for just buying so many commercial ads that you could not help but see it back in an era when broadcast television ads were so very important. The thing is that Crazy Eddie's was, as it turns out, one of the largest retail frauds in American history. One of the people that cooked those books, Eddie Antar's cousin, Sammy Antar. So Sam turned state's witness against his cousin when the heat got big and revealed everything that they were doing to the FBI. He got I think he was convicted, but he got a lenient sentence and has spent the rest of his life as a forensic accountant consultant, as he pitches it, being able to think like a crook while count beans like an accountant. He does seem, at least according to his social media, to have gotten more political over the years, although he says he is an apolitical person. And one of the people for whom he has doggedly collected data on is Letitia James. And he, at least to my radar, was the first person to break the idea that Letitia James might have committed mortgage fraud by stating that a property that she had in Virginia was her primary residence, therefore getting a favorable mortgage rate and tax breaks and stuff like that. Lying about that is a crime. And now she has been indicted for it. Would she be indicted had she not been a foe to Donald Trump? I don't think so. But why was she a foe to Donald Trump? Because she ran on the idea that she would prosecute him. So, where do we go from there? You know, this is what I said on the extra that I put out. The problem with political-based weaponization of a justice system is that nobody knows when to stop because you're the idiot holding the bag if you don't if you don't go after the people that went after you. And so round and round and round and round and round and round we go. Based only on the stuff that I have followed on Sam Antar's Twitter and blog, it does seem like there is something here. Will it raise to the level of being able to pass a criminal courtroom? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. But it is very interesting. And look, again, this is one of the dangers of this entire process. This is why it's a bad idea to weaponize the justice system. Lesson number 1 billion. All right, finally, another story that broke while I was out of sorts for a little bit over the last week. Wesley Hunt is now officially running for Senate in Texas. Wesley Hunt is young. He is upcoming. And the thought was he would only run if it was pretty clear that John Cornyn, the sitting senator for Texas, would not. Well, it looks like Cornyn is still in the race. And now it is a 3-way dance between John Cornyn, Ken Paxton, and Wesley Hunt. And we have our first poll in that race. This is from the University of Houston. It was conducted from September 19th to October 1st. It is a sample of likely voters. And it has Paxton leading by 1%. 34 for Paxton, 33 for Cornyn, and 22 for Wesley Hunt. So it looks like Wesley Hunt is drawing from both Paxton and Cornyn. He is somebody that anti-Paxton or anti-Cornyn voters can look at as a more MAGA candidate, but they don't really like Paxton because even though Trump loves him and he's the guy that files the lawsuits, he also has, the wife divorcing him and the cheating and the corruption and all that. A lot of hair there. But he's also drawing a little bit from Cornyn. So just to give you another insight, Qantas Insights did a poll on this race with Hunt in it. This was back in May. 600 registered voters. It had Paxton at 46, Cornyn at 38, and Wesley Hunt at 16. So it seems like Wesley Hunt officially entering the race, although this is mostly taken before he did that. That's interesting. So this is still theoretical. We have yet to get an actual Hunt in the race. That'll be interesting to see. But it looks like even theoretically, Hunt was pulling from both. In fact, maybe even a little bit more from Paxton. Interesting. Intrigue, like everything else, is bigger here in Texas. That's your update. TakePoliticsSeriously.com, where you need to go if you want to get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. And now, Mr. Ken Vogel. It is my pleasure to welcome an investigative reporter for the New York Times and the author of Devil's Advocates, the new book about foreign influence in American government. Ken Vogel, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
I will say that, unfortunately, despite the fact that I found your book to be an intensely gripping read, I was unable to finish it because, along with the rest of my luggage, it was stolen out of my car in Oakland, California. But just know, somewhere amongst the rest of my items, somebody is probably having a great time reading your book, which is indeed a gripping look inside the world of political influence in America.
Well, geez, I'm sorry to hear about your loss there, but I hope that maybe The Thief also has a podcast and they'd welcome me on as well.
Maybe. You want to know what? This is actually my honeypot. Now you're going to get another reach out of somebody asking you to come on, and I'll be able to find my laptop. Let's get into the premise of the book. What drew you to this world?
Yeah, I mean, I'd covered sort of money and politics in the traditional sense for Politico and the New York Times. And what that meant was largely domestic, donors, major donors, or advocacy groups or corporations that were spending a lot of money through campaign donations or lobbying to try to influence American politics. And as I sort of went on, particularly around like 2016, the election of Donald Trump, I noticed that there were actually a lot of foreign interests that were using some of the same mechanisms to try to influence our politics. Obviously, we saw it reveal itself in sort of an explosive, scandalous way around the Russian meddling in the 2016 election. But we also saw it with the controversy around Hunter Biden's work in Ukraine and elsewhere. And it just became like a real subject of interest for me. And I saw that, this was happening not just in the ways that were breaking through and capturing public attention, excuse me, but also more comprehensively. A number of foreign interests were sort of working our system in a way that, influence our politics in a way that wasn't really attracting a lot of attention, and that therefore sort of made it more effective. So I thought it was a good area to scrutinize and sort of shine the spotlight on.
I think it also attracts a lot of colorful characters, which makes for a very, very interesting book as you write it. Just to give listeners a sense of it, how big is this in dollar figures? If we are just to let's just look at foreign influence in the American governmental system. What are we talking about if we were to draw a circle around it number wise?
I mean, billions. There's no way to really comprehensively track all of it. We do have the Foreign Agents Registration Act, which requires people who are trying to influence the U.S. government or the media on behalf of foreign political interests to disclose, both who they're working for and how much they're paid. And we do see, figures in the billions, but single-digit billions since 2016, when this act sort of got a bit of a boost as a result of the 2016 Russian interference scandal and the Mueller investigation. But there's so much that isn't disclosed, both because people don't really follow the law, the FARA, and more recently, Pam Bondi has actually sort of taken some of the teeth out of FARA and said that the Justice Department under Attorney General Bondi is not going to pursue criminal investigations into violations of the Foreign Agents Registration Act. So that already there were people who were doing business that should have been disclosed that weren't disclosed. Yeah. And maybe there was like a little bit of an uptick in disclosure as a result of the Mueller investigation. But now I think we're seeing the pendulum swing back again. And there's all kinds of stuff that just is not tracked. Everything from, paying influencers through agencies to post on social media about stuff. I mean, sometimes we have seen the Justice Department did bring charges against one group of sort of podcasters who were getting money.
Yeah, this was the whole tenant media thing,
correct,
right? Yeah. With Lauren Chen, but was that dismissed?
I don't know the current status of that, but like those,
okay.
the podcasters themselves weren't like implicated. They weren't charged. It was the interest it was the like corporate interest that were facilitating.
Yeah, the Russian interest. Yeah, that was working through one of the podcasters. Yeah, that was a fascinating situation because I'm pretty sure that I was on the same back then. They were grabbing anybody. Pre-war, when Russia Today would reach out, I was a little bit more amenable to going on anywhere that had any kind of platform. And I think I was on a panel with the lady that Lauren Chen, who wound up getting swept up in that. So I don't know. She did a better job because I wasn't approached as a fence for a gigantic foreign influence operation. But you want to know what? Maybe next time, Moscow.
Get some of that sweet ruble.
Exactly. Hey, look, my PayPal works just the same.
Right. But I just cite that by way of saying, like, there's so much stuff that we don't have a handle on. We just don't know how much money is flowing in, and there are new ways for that foreign money to flow in and those influence campaigns to manifest themselves.
One of the things that you point out in the book is that the price gets higher the more controversial the country, and so you have a lot of organizations throughout the Middle East and some parts through Asia, which don't exactly have the greatest human rights record, but they want to be involved in government on some level. And the people that take those gigs, wind up being able to buy bigger houses with bigger pools, but have to walk this line.
Yeah, I quote a guy in the book talking about the oligarch premium, which is this idea that there are interests, sometimes very deep-pocketed interests who have a lot of money, sometimes because they've gotten it through sort of ill-gotten means, but also then have like extra incentive to try to avoid the scrutiny from either the U.S. government in the form of sanctions or the international community in the case of like war crimes charges. And they are willing to spend more money to try to effectuate that result, to try to get out of trouble or prevent themselves from being sort of scrutinized. And it makes sense that they would like have more money and pay more money. And it also makes more sense that the people who would go to work for them would need more money to make it worth their while, given the possibility, in some cases, the likelihood or the certainty of the reputational taint that comes with working for these problematic clients. And so one of the examples that I drill down deeply on in the book is in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where there was the former president, Joseph Kabila, who the U.S. for years had been trying to get out of office. He had overstayed his term limits and had suspended elections and was accused of, real repressive brutality of his constituents. And so he threw around a lot of money on U.S. lobbyists who initially were exploring like whether there was a way for him to stay in power and stay out of, avoid additional sanctions. And then once it became clear that that the U.S. would not condone that and that he was likely going to have to step down to try to negotiate sort of an exit package that would allow him
favorable way out. Yeah,
exactly. And so, and he ended up succeeding. And look, I mean, it was actually a good example because it shows like, sure, these lobbyists were going to work for this guy who was, seen as sort of a blight on the world stage. But like maybe that there was like a U.S. foreign policy interest in that because he eventually did leave office, and some of these lobbyists who worked on it kind of claim credit for helping ease the way for that. So in some ways, it's like a bad result, that people are getting rich off of these sort of corrupt foreign interests. But in some ways, there is an argument to be made, and they do make it, that like they can actually help sort of serve U.S. foreign policy interests in some of these places.
I, for one, would like to take a moment to thank the brave lobbyists for all of their great sacrifices, and I look forward for them to pick up the tab now that I publicly stated how amazing they are. One of the things that you bring up in the book is this nebulous idea, especially with foreign interests that only know what they want from the American government, that maybe some of these is a little bit of a rainmaker situation, that, they don't really know exactly how close these lobbyists are to the levers of power, but they're paying them a tremendous premium. And sometimes things happen and the lobbyist says, "Oh my God, you wouldn't believe what I did for you." And sometimes it doesn't happen. And they say, "Hey, if I couldn't get it done, then nobody could have gotten it done," when really the American system just kind of turns in the way that it does. How much of this is real and how much of this is, just living in DC, taking the right Instagram pictures and cashing the check?
Yeah, there's that is the like quintessential question when it comes to lobbying of all sorts, not just foreign lobbying. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors, and you see different approaches. You see people who do just take the selfies of themselves at Mar-a-Lago with Trump. And are they like actually dining with Trump and in his inner circle? Or did they just happen to go there as a guest of a member and catch him as he was like walking through the hallway? Those are like the open questions. So there is great incentive, obviously, for lobbyists of all stripes to cast themselves as real movers and shakers who have the ability to change American foreign policy in this case, but, domestic or corporate or whatever, healthcare policy in the case of some other areas that are big in lobbying spending. And to claim credit for like a result that, as you point out, like may have happened anyway, or to shift blame if the result doesn't come through as the lobbyist and their clients intended, to say, oh, it was actually because like the lobbyist who you had before was bad, or even more sort of, cynically, oh, it's because the other side paid their lobbyists more, and like you should have paid me more so I could have hired more people. This is like, this is a debate, and it's also one that like I think that like there are corporate interests, domestic corporate interests who are like more sophisticated in being able to gauge like, am I getting what I'm paying for from these lobbyists? And I think that's harder for some of these foreign interests who are more susceptible to the spin of the lobbyists and don't necessarily have the people who can serve as the sounding boards and be like, this dude is a fraud. Like he doesn't have the connections that he says he does. Or, this person is actually low key, kind of like very influential, but they're not out there like advertising it. And some of that gets to, I think, a really interesting distinction between like the U.S. or at least the way the U.S. has traditionally operated in its political system and other parts of the world, like in the parts of the developing world or the former Soviet world or parts of Africa or the Middle East or Asia. Like there is this mindset of like cronyism or, sort of like pay to play, that like, I want to get something for the government, so therefore I pay people around the leaders who are going to, help me get my way here. And, the U.S. has all of these laws and ethics rules and conflicts of interest rules and disclosure rules that are intended to prevent that result. And so we like to think, well, we don't do things that way. And certainly there are lobbyists who like take advantage of that perception abroad that like, actually, no, we do things that way. And if you pay me, I'll help you end up on the right side of this. And, more and more, I think like the conceit that like we're so different from the rest of the world and that we do things in a more above board way is being challenged and brought into question, such that these lobbyist characterizations that like the way that things work in the US is not so different from like any post-Soviet country. Like there's more there now than I think there's ever been.
Well, and certainly from the point of view of the lobbyists, it is incumbent upon them to tell their clients that that is more and more the case, because
Exactly.
that is the entire pipeline for them to make money. The Donald Trump administration is something that obviously has a lot of different quirks. He is somebody that is very much still tied in modern business with his family. Uh, but even if we're going to put aside any transactional nature that you might imagine, he is famously capricious and does the thing that the last person who talked to him told him that he was going to do, which some people can look at as a refreshing way to find new avenues to do stuff. And I would imagine, especially for foreign policy situations, a lot of people say, hey, look, all I got to do is make sure that my lobbyist is the last peg on the Plinko board so it gets to be where I want to be. Have we seen a boom in the post-Trump era of this? You mentioned obviously the news pegs of the Mueller report, bringing it to the public fore. But from your perspective, talking to lobbyists, foreign lobbyists specifically, is this kind of the golden age?
Yes, is the short answer. And there's three reasons, two of which you mentioned. One is this like sort of capricious nature. Two is that there's I'm sorry. First is that there is this transactionalism. There's like a willingness to entertain proposals that have like a bottom line or, political benefit or financial benefit that otherwise would not have been entertained. And so that's like with himself and his family through their crypto enterprises. It's with, Steve Witkoff, who the Times recently reported son, follows in his footsteps around the world and meets with people to discuss business, who his dad, the people who were just discussing like foreign policy concerns and government policy with the father. Massad Boulos, who is Tiffany Trump's father-in-law, similar situation, and his son is running around the world in the father's footsteps. And so, there's there's transactionalism. There is the sort of like capriciousness that you're talking about, like dealing, like sort of acting on the advice of the last person who talked to him, which incentivizes,
more players in the game. Yeah.
Right. Hiring lobbyists who do, travel in his circles and might be that person who's the last person in his ear on a given topic. And then the third point is like Trump's willingness to disregard traditional U.S. foreign policy ideals or imperatives and talk to Kim Jong-un or talk to Putin. And so like there is more of a chance of disruption if you are like a foreign interest or government or oligarch or whatever, who otherwise would not have gotten the time of day from the State Department or the career officials who would set foreign policy. Well, under Trump, there's the possibility that he's willing to set aside all that came before and make a deal. And that, from the lobbyist perspective, incentivizes these people who want to make the deal, hiring someone who can broker it.
Yeah, I would imagine that, any kind of erosion, very much the Trump wave has eroded a way of thinking from like a State Department perspective and certainly a foreign policy perspective, that any kind of shift in meta is going to, from a country as powerful as the United States, is going to attract a lot of people who want to make sure that they are well entrenched in whatever comes after that. And there are a few presidents that I can think of that wants to take a more let's review the board in totality approach than Donald Trump. The subtitle of your book is The Hidden Story of Rudy Giuliani, Hunter Biden, and the Washington insiders that are on the payrolls of corrupt foreign interests. Obviously, those two names are incredibly well known. And specifically, what was happening in Ukraine before the war is something that has almost exclusively, especially for my listeners and probably the world at large, only been introduced in very political terms. Either Rudy Giuliani going over there, and that was what got Trump his first impeachment, or Hunter Biden being looked at as this corrupting influence for the Biden administration. Beyond the you did this, a political mud fight of it, what did you learn in your reporting on, that would surprise people?
Well, I mean, yeah, Ukraine is a good example because there's certainly been a lot of like high profile scandals that have come out of there, and obviously it's right in the center of sort of geopolitics with the Russian invasion. But like for years before that, Ukraine was a hotbed of like this type of foreign consulting, and it was because it was this like post-Soviet country where like the oligarchs were running the show and they had a ton of money to throw around and they had interests that they wanted to protect. And so for years they were bringing in like top American consultants. I'm talking not just like Rudy Giuliani or Hunter Biden, but like serious people with like serious political chops, Paul Manafort. There was a 2009 presidential election, I believe it was 2009, where like they brought in like the different candidates, brought in like top advisors who had just worked on the Obama campaign, top advisors from the McCain campaign, a top like John Kerry advisor from his 2004 election. And the interesting thing that really shows that this is not like a partisan thing in the way that you were referring to, like a lot of people perceive it, is that like these consultants were sometimes working on the same team. So you had like a top Democrat working with like Paul Manafort, and it's because like the parties there aren't like red and blue, they're green. Like so much of it is driven by the money.
And they just want the top talent. So they're going to build like their dream team of whoever they think they can get. They're going to pay top dollar for it because they want to win this election and they just want competency. They don't care about whether or not when they go home, they have to fight each other to the death in the political world.
That's exactly right. They set aside. So like I have a quote from James Carville. This was from around 2009. He wasn't involved in the Ukraine stuff, but he was like a pioneer of working foreign
internationally.
Yeah. And he said something to the effect, I'm sort of paraphrasing here, but he's like, after you run a presidential, and I'm not going to try his accent. After you run a presidential campaign, like, why would you go and run a gubernatorial campaign in New Jersey or Virginia where you could get like, whatever, $5 million, $1 million and lose and like be like embarrassed when you could go to some foreign country and run a campaign for $10 million and no one even necessarily
cares. Yeah.
So that was interesting, just seeing the sort of bipartisan way that that the pursuit of this type of stuff works. And then I did find like some new and interesting things about like Paul Manafort. It's fascinating to sort of track him because Carville was one of the godfathers of like the foreign political consulting. What Manafort did that was like unique. I mean, Manafort in many ways had his fingerprints just all over like the development of the like modern American domestic lobbying and political consulting, but also foreign lobbying and political consulting in the way that the lines could blur. Like he would go around the world during the Reagan and Bush administrations and tell these like sometimes like rather unsavory interests. Like I can get you on the good side of Washington. All you got to do is like hire me to run your campaign or lobby for you. And I will cast you as like the anti-communist, champion in this part of the world or that part of the world. Obviously, during the Cold War, that like goes a long way.
That's big money.
And he was like, and he was quite effective, and he served as sort of like an informal liaison between the Reagan and Bush administrations and like some of these far-flung interests in the Philippines with Ferdinand Marcos, or in Angola with Jonas Savimbi, the guerrilla leader there, and Ukraine, where he made a ton of money and ultimately went to jail because he violated the foreign lobbying laws and tax laws and bank regulations. But what's so fascinating is he gets pardoned by Trump at the end of his first term, and he is right back at it. He is doing the same stuff in different countries, sometimes pitching in the same countries, but his shtick is now not like, I will make you into a favorite of the Bush or Reagan administrations by casting you as like the anti-communist fighter in the Cold War, but rather I will cast you as like an enemy of the deep state who has been persecuted by the prosecutors in your country or the international community or the Biden administration. The case of one candidate whose campaign he ran in Albania, and like that is what appeals to Trump. It's not like taking a principled stance against communism or any particular issue. It's like, I too am aggrieved and have been a victim of the deep state, and therefore I deserve the support of Trump and the people around him.
With Rudy and Hunter in Ukraine, that just seems like this is something that we should probably look at more as just a symptom of a rampant, a system that just grabbed any and every American that could possibly influence power in DC because they were so dependent on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a symptom of that for sure, but it's also a symptom of like the degree, like it's a symptom of like the still like toxic and politically charged nature of this, that like Rudy Giuliani correctly deduced, like this could be like a political cudgel that I could use to, that I and Trump could use to against the Bidens. And it's also a symptom of Trump's willingness to entertain that and to like shape his foreign policy around, not around like traditional ideals about democracy or free speech or human rights, but rather around what is of political benefit for him. So Rudy, brings him this potential attack line against the Bidens, and Trump like willingly seizes on it, not just seizes on it, but like uses it to browbeat Zelensky, at the threat of like withholding aid to make it a bigger story. And the most fascinating, and obviously it backfired spectacularly, resulting in the first impeachment and maybe the beginning of Rudy's troubles. Obviously, his work after the 2020
he has had
election.
many of them since. Yeah,
right. Which is also like a fascinating thing because, like, in some ways, the effort to like overturn an election and cling to power is like what some of these like foreign clients of these lobbyists do. It's like it's like a very third world type of behavior. But on the thing about Rudy that was like so fascinating to me is like he knew like what Hunter was doing, and he knew like some of the people who Hunter was working with, not just in Ukraine, but also in Romania and elsewhere. And why did he know? Because he was working for some of the same people, in some cases working on the same side, trying to like diffuse a corruption investigation that was supported by the US government against a Romanian real estate developer. Hunter worked for that developer. And then Hunter, at a time when his father was vice president and was urging on the type of anti-corruption initiatives that Hunter was like on the other side of, Hunter brought in Louis Freeh, the former FBI director, to try to help this developer. And Louis Freeh brought in Rudy Giuliani. So it's like they're all working on the same thing. So when Rudy comes out and is like, finger wagging at Hunter Biden about like working, taking like money from corrupt foreign interests, it's like, dude, you
did the same thing.
Situation.
Yeah, it is. How did you obviously go into this. I don't think that you are a shrinking violet when it comes to the world of money and politics and influence. And I think you do have to have a lead stomach to really get into the middle of this and spend as much time as you do doing it from a reporter perspective. Is there anything that really blew your hair back and shocked you as you were doing this, or do you just get jaded at the very beginning and you just kind of continue to live in this upside down world?
I think the amount of money was like surprising. And again, it's only like some of it that shows up in these Foreign Agents Registration Act reports, but there's like so much more that's available because like these lobbyists go in and they're offering like a traditional suite of services, whatever, domestic, political consulting or lobbying. But then they're like, you know what, like these people have like so much money who I'm working for. And like, they often like try to transition into like the business side. Like I can help you. It's not just lobbying that I can help you. Like I can help you do a big deal for whatever, oil rights or land deal, real estate deals. Like, so you should pay me for that. And then it sort of blurs the line even further. It's not like lobbying. It's not political consulting. It's like business consulting, and there's no disclosure requirements on that stuff. And so I think like the degree to which that was like a goal, or it had like become a goal of some of these lobbyists, it wasn't like they weren't just content to be like, oh, I'm like serving you as like I'm like a service provider. It's like,
Yeah.
I see myself as like a principal. Like I am a deal maker. I want the money and the sort of like influence that's associated with being the one who's actually like at the table, not the one who's like sitting behind the table, like whispering in your ear about some political matter.
I remember watching an interview with Hunter Biden's business associate. I think Devin Archer is his name. He was making the argument that, like, look, the reason why people bring in Hunter Biden is like because he has the president on his phone, and every once in a while he takes a call from it. But again, it gets into this world of like, well, like, how much are they doing? Like, I guess that's the big question, is that it's like, all right, well, Hunter Biden at that time didn't seem to me to have the hardest work ethic. I don't imagine that Rudy Giuliani was really going to break his back for, anybody, at that stage of his career. Is part of this just a spoil of America being at the top of the economic and, military ladder. And this is just kind of a fringe benefit that our outer ring of power gets to soak up money from oligarchs?
That's a good way to look at it. Right. I mean, they're selling like this illusion that like, if you hire me, like you are getting connections to my like political patron, in Rudy Giuliani's case, Trump. In Hunter Biden's case, obviously his father. And like in both those cases, yes, there are real questions about like what these folks actually did for the money, and whether, I mean, Devin, you mentioned Devin Archer. He coined a phrase or used a phrase during, I don't remember if this is testimony, before one of the congressional committees or if it was like a subsequent media interview, but he said like, so he was selling like the illusion of access and the illusion of influence. And like, that's right. I mean, it's not the illusion of access, because in some cases with Hunter, like these foreign business partners actually got introduced to Joe Biden, not while he was, while he was vice president.
It was, in China, we had the picture, right? I don't know about the Ukraine one.
Yeah. And then there was a subsequent one with another, like an even deeper pocketage. So there was like one sort of set of people who Chinese like business, folks who Hunter worked with like early or sort of mid vice presidency in like 2012, 13. But then there was another set of like even like more influential Chinese business executives associated with this company, CEFC China Energy, which was, I mean, it was like a cog in the Chinese government's Belt and Road, like economic influence initiative, where they were trying to spread money through investments in infrastructure and other things like all around the world to kind of engage in this like economic imperialism almost.
Yeah.
And Hunter Biden was like talking to those folks. Now, it was by the time that he was sort of really engaged with them and like possible business proposals, his father was out of office. He was between the vice presidency and the presidency. But like during that time, Hunter Biden like brought his father to a dinner at the Four Seasons with this guy who was like a right-hand man of like President Xi, and so there is access, but like to what end? What does that get you? Ultimately, Hunter Biden did get paid quite a bit, millions of dollars by this entity that I'm talking about, CEFC China Energy. But like they didn't really get what they wanted, or they didn't get what he was pitching. Maybe they did get what they wanted. Maybe all they wanted was having Hunter Biden on their payroll. But certainly like the projects that he was pitching to them as the reason for them to pay him never manifested.
Well, I'll tell you what, it is a fantastic read. I look forward to finishing it as soon as I list it on my Amex report for them to buy me a new copy. But it is called Devil's Advocates, the hidden story of Rudy Giuliani, Hunter Biden, and the Washington insiders on the payroll of corrupt foreign interests. How should people buy it?
Well, I mean, you could go to the HarperCollins page for it, and it has links to all the different platforms, but it's on all of them, Books A Million, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Audible, whatever. So please buy it. I'd be curious.
I'll say it so Ken doesn't. Buy it on Amazon. That's where the publishers look. Buy it on Amazon. He can't say it because of other reasons, but I'm telling you, buy it on Amazon. Let's make sure that we spike it as much as we possibly can. It is excellent work. And what I really, really appreciated about it is that for as much as we talk about things like foreign influence, it's often always looked at from the political lens of somebody who got their hand caught in the cookie jar. And there is so much more complexity. And again, I cannot highlight for our listeners enough. It's just a colorful rogues gallery of people that do this for a living, because you have to be a certain kind of personality if you're like, yes, I want to take international flights, once a month so I can sit with oligarchs and sell them on how I'm going to make all of their dreams come true in America. Great work. Congratulations on the book and the release. Kenneth Vogel, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
And that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics, written and hosted by me, Justin Robert Young, for Dog and Pony Show Audio. If you want to email me, theyoungamerican@gmail.com. Big thank you to our producer and editor, Will Saddleberg. You want to get clips of the show, go on TikTok, Justin R. Young, Instagram, Justin R. Young, X, Justin R. Young, and you want to get full video episodes of the show, it is Politics on the YouTube. You want to see insane AI videos, you can follow me on Sora if you got an invite code, Justin R. Young there too. I'm mostly spending my time making AI videos of extremely jacked versions of Andrew Heaton doing extremely athletic things. I'm going to make enough of them that he comments on it. I'm not going to send any of them to him. I just want to keep doing it until it becomes creepy and he has to step up and say something. That's the goal. If you would like to support this program with a one-time donation, it is paypal.me/payjury. Venmo is Justin-Young-20. Cash App is PX3Cash. And you can send me anything you'd like in the mail. Post Office Box 153184, Austin, Texas 78715. You can always get our bonus content at TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Paying members get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. Either $3 a week, essentially. It's billed 12 monthly, or $99 for the entire year. That's 150 episodes of PX3 for under $100. And I am very aware that we are just now entering into the world where you guys are going to get your renewals. And I just want to tell you, thank you. Thank you. I look forward to beginning this new beautiful move. We're going to be done with Prop 50 in California, done with New Jersey, done with Virginia. And I swear I'm going to get to this Virginia Attorney General stuff because that stuff is nuts too. We're going to be done with all that and it's going to be all midterms. Oh, Wesley Hunt versus Paxton versus Cornyn, a 3-way dance. Will Jasmine Crockett run for the Democratic Senate? She says no, but the polls keep showing her up. And she could run against Ken Paxton, possibly. Ooh-wee. Jasmine Crockett versus Wesley Hunt. Sign me up for that one, too. Democrats got who they want in Maine. Oh, it's going to be interesting. All right. Thank you to everybody who supports us. And thank you the most to everybody who supports us at the foundational tier. It is only there that you get your name read at the end of each and every show, like Sonny Black, L3PO, Peepaw, Scott, Middle-Aged Mike, Tom, Sarah Jeannie, Jeremy, Pro Idiot, Chiller Tomatoes, oh yeah, it's Adam, Neil, AB Puppy, Dr. Whiskey, Michael, Fat Tony's PJs from New York, Will, The Borge B, Matthew, Matt, Andrew, Edwin, Sam, Andrew, Phil, Edison, Devon, Paul, a dog named Checkers, Gloria, my mom, Jerry, Trucker, John, Berkeley, Steven, and Zombie Doc. You want your name read on the show? One place to do it. Foundational tier. Head on over there right now. But that is it for us this week. We'll be back next week. I actually am going to be in town. Thrilled for that to be the case, not to be on the road. Anywho. Till next time, this is your old pal Justin Robert Young saying, some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, and still more discuss politics, but this is the only show that dares discuss. Oh, 3.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Dog and Pony Show audio.